This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Ron Rohde, Kentucky Afield's first host back in 1953. Now, I'm proud to present Charlie Baglin.
Big boating weekend number 2 is ready to set sail this summer, 4th of July weekend. Leading up to this is what those in patrol boats call Operation Dry Water. We have a translation. Plus, you're walking along, you see what you think is an abandoned baby deer, rabbit, robin. What do? We'll tell you. Plus, Kentucky is number 1 again, and we are not talking basketball. Details next as we go inside outdoors on Kentucky Afield Radio.
Swimming has taken me around the world.
Olympic swimming gold medalist Rachel Comazar.
It's a thrill to swim for your country, but it's another to swim for your life. In a boating accident, that's what happens. It can happen to you. You could be hurt, dazed, unconscious. Being a good swimmer isn't good enough. When fun turns frantic, trust me, your life jacket is as good as gold.
Kentucky Fish and Wildlife reminds you, your life jacket's got your back and the backing of the best swimmers everywhere. My fun budget this summer is $10 a day.
Ooh, big spender.
Then it hit me.
Uh-oh.
Include the family. This summer, we all have different roads we want to travel.
Ooh, travel.
And we're putting fishing on that list, too. And it turns out, I over-budgeted. A Kentucky fishing license costs about $0.05 a day. And kids are free.
I married a saver.
You married a keeper. This summer, catch some family fun. Google Kentucky Fishing to learn more. Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglin, and there are 3 big boating weekends over the course of the summer. How big is big? I liken it to the Super Bowl weekend of boating, the opening day of baseball season version of boating, boating's Derby Day. It's like quarter night at the Louisville Redbirds. This is going back 20 years or so. Louisville had a minor league baseball team, the Louisville Redbirds, and from recollection, every now and then they would have quarter night. And people that didn't even like baseball came out for quarter night. Get quarter admission, quarter hot dogs, quarter sodas, quarter everything. You'd be sitting there in the stands. You'd look around and say, hardly anybody here. Then you'd go down to the concession area, it'd be packed. People down there eating. Where else could you go to fill yourself? I mean, to eat till you turn blue for like $1, $1.25. So Memorial Day, July 4th weekend, and Labor Day weekends are kind of like that. The turnout is just intense. In the studio are Boating Education Chief Zach Campbell, Major Shane Carrier of the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and Officer Jared Alley from his post on Lake Cumberland. I was reading here in the Fishing and Boating Guide, statistics show that approximately half of the boating-related fatalities involve boats that are less than 16 feet in length. They say that these boats are usually very unstable. They can tip over. They can throw their occupants out, and if they're not wearing a life jacket, it's just what you said. They are easily swamped if you're out on a large body of water, Kentucky Lake, Lake Barkley, Cumberland. Are you seeing this in real life out there in the real world?
Well, we do. A lot of that is and it's unfortunate, but, sometimes a 12-foot John boat is the only vessel, I guess, someone may be able to, at that point in their life, to purchase. And you can have a lot of fun in those boats. When I was growing up, I had a 12-foot John boat. And the only catch to that was I knew better than to come to Lake Cumberland in the early spring and late fall to try to use that boat because I knew it would swamp. We do see a bunch of those boats swamped. A lot of our marinas down here, they rent boats that size. They rent a houseboat. And to help with the tying up of the houseboat and the running back and forth to the marina to get ice and supplies, they'll rent you a 12-foot John boat, with a 10 or 12-horse outboard on it. They're terrible to swamp, especially in rough waters. We don't have near the chop on this lake that like Barkley or Kentucky Lake will have over there. But there are times when our boat traffic is, you feel like you're on the ocean, and it's just constant chop, hit wave after wave after wave, and there's a ton of these small boats that capsize each year down here. Usually they're pretty close. The people are cognizant enough to be close to the shore when they're trying to use these boats, so if something does go wrong, they can at least get to the main relatively easily. A lot of these people that we see in the summertime in these boats, they've got their life jackets on. They're aware enough of their surroundings to know that they had best had it on in a situation when you're in a vessel that small.
I guess maybe I've been a little unfair. I've been talking a lot about our larger lakes, Kentucky and Barkley Lakes and Lake Cumberland. What if you were in Paintsville Lake? What if you were in Lake Corinth or Mauzé? And what if you were in these smaller lakes? Is boating still the hazard there that it is elsewhere? Can you lighten up a little bit on those lakes?
The risks are there no matter what body of water you're on. The boat traffic may not be as significant. It may not be as congested of an area in a confined space, but all the hazards are still there. You're sharing the water with other people. There's still the potential for drowning. So all of our laws apply to all the waters in the state. The biggest difference is the number of people and how rough the water gets as far as weather conditions or boat traffic could be a factor. But typically, if you, like Officer Alley said, if you're in a smaller boat, you need to take a little more precautions about where you operate it. Rough water or huge expanses of water, big lakes, you don't want to try to cross those or run from one end to the other. Just basically, like we said before, use your common sense. And we've drawn so many comparisons to boating and operating on a motor vehicle on the highway. Well, the huge difference is that you have to pass a test to get your motor vehicle driver's license. Before we will let you drive on our public highways, we got to make sure that you understand the rules of the road and the regulations and what's expected of you. That's not true for the water. Keep in mind that an adult, 20, 30, 40 years old or older, can go to the local boat store and buy the fastest boat made and go to the lake that day with it with zero training. And there's no law mandating that they take this boat education course that we offer. It's mandated for youth, age 12 to 17, if they're operating a boat over 10 horsepower. But that's the only mandated education that we have. We highly suggest it. We try to make the general boating public aware that they need to take this class before they get on the water. But the simple fact is they don't have to, and that's why we have talked about being aware of your surroundings so much. It's not necessarily watching out for yourself. You may have taken this boat education class and be fully aware of what's required of you and what's going on. But the guy that's coming down the lake towards you may have just bought that boat that day and have absolutely no idea which side to pass on. There's no speed limit on the water, so he may be running as fast as the boat will go. That's where the hazards come in about boating on the water and the importance of education.
I'm going to say something here, and if a boater were standing out in the hall, she would come in and slap me. But everybody here on this program, everybody anywhere listening, is always an expert at something. And if it's a hobby or coaching a little league baseball or tennis or whatever it might be, it's a subject they know thoroughly. But if they sat down and read an article, they sat down and sort of reintroduced themselves to the list of rules, they'll come away, I forgot about that. They will come back a little bit more enlightened, a refresher course, if you will, and it doesn't take 5 minutes of reading. You could pick up the fishing and boating guide and go over that. That's right, I forgot about that. Or this is something I have paid very little attention to. I better check those navigation lights. That sort of thing. That it doesn't take that much effort to do it right versus having to pay the consequences. That's correct.
And we mentioned, Major Carrier, you talked about the comparison again with getting your driver's license. We mentioned the Go Fast boats, the fastest boats out there you can just go out and buy, but we didn't mention the huge houseboats. And even to how we talked about earlier about are we being too rough, are we regulating, big government controlling, it's done on the roadways to a certain extent. Compare a large houseboat to tractor trailer, you even need your CDL license to operate that, and it has brakes. You're out there on the water with a huge houseboat, and it's being operated just rented on the weekend, and the person may not know how to drive it whatsoever. So there's a reoccurring theme. If you're out there, you may be educated, but we need to, with everything we've talked about, the reoccurring theme is be aware of your surroundings and wear your life jackets.
That's true, Zach. Your life jacket's got your back. Music is playing, so we got to get to a break. I'm Charlie Baglin. Stay with us. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Charlie Baglin on Kentucky Afield Radio. Welcome back. Midsummer boating is the subject. July 4th week, July 4th weekend, a major time of the year for boating traffic on rivers and lakes. Kentucky conservation officers, along with Coast Guard officials and a few other water patrol units, keep an eye on things regardless of the type of boat that you have. Houseboats. That, to me, doesn't say I'm going to see a water skier being pulled behind them. Neighbors of mine spend every weekend on Green River Lake. They love it. They talk about their houseboat and the front deck and the back deck and the ceiling fans that are on that, and just put in a new stove and refrigerator and the master bedroom swing. I mean, this sounds like a mansion. Is that considered major carrier, officer alley, recreational boating that you have to inspect?
There are some special regulations regarding the houseboats. A lot of the boats now are U.S. Coast Guard documented versus registered in the Commonwealth. There's a variety of reasons why they do that. Some manufacturers of these houseboats sort of encourage that. I don't know that it's really easier to do that or not. I think it is a little cheaper over the long term for them to do that way. Of course, I don't want to be negative, but I think for a while some people were doing that because they were maybe some loopholes in the personal property tax laws in the Commonwealth, and I think the Department of Revenue has sort of tightened up on that big time. So we're actually seeing a few more of the houseboats being registered in the state now. But some of the things are the same. You need all the same safety equipment, this and that. One of the exceptions would be the marine sanitation device. These boats, most of them, depending on what body of water you're on, most of the waters are a no-discharge waters. And that is something that we have the statutory ability to inspect. We do receive calls on some brown water discharge or gray water discharge from time to time, and we do that. There are some specialties. The only common thing with them and the other vessels is the ability that if you have a checkbook in your pocket, you can go today and buy one. A lot of places you can go and rent one. Most of the marinas are good to give a little bit of a somewhat informative training on the proper operation of these. But it seems like when some of these people that have driven down here 3 or 4 or 5 or sometimes 10 or 11 or 12 hours to get to the lake, that 30-minute training isn't really soaking into them. They're down here, they've spent their money, they want to get out, they want to get out of the store, they want to get out there. I'm not going to go somewhere and not know what I can and can't do before I get there, and it would be so nice if everyone would do that. One of the things, and we touched on it earlier about the potential for this danger out on the waterways, one thing that hadn't been mentioned is you're in remote areas on these waterways. Versus a motor vehicle, if you break down on the side of 75, or if you have some kind of medical emergency going up and down the interstate, you're pretty well, there's mile markers there that tell you where you are, there's exits, there's rest stops you're pretty close to people. There's some of the places on these waterways that it would be an hour before I could get there. There's a thing known as a float plan that is highly recommended. It's no different than if you're going hunting somewhere. People need to know where you're going, how long you're going to be there, when you're coming back. And that's something that is so beneficial with the boats, especially, is if you leave the harbor at your marina, if you put in, someone needs to know what your plans are for that day, where you're going to go, because nothing is as frustrating as getting a call, and I got one a couple nights ago. It was 2 a.m. I got called. There's two boys out in the fishing boat. They put in Cumberland Point, and they were going. No one knew where they were going, and they were supposed to be back. And I've got 1,200 miles of shoreline down here, and I was the one on call that night. So, where do I go? How do I have any idea where these young boys are in the boat in the middle of the night? Luckily enough, they finally had cell phone reception and were able to talk with the people. So about the time I got to the marina, the problem was solved. But
Officer Alley, there you have an associate named Lieutenant Brett Zala. I'm pretty sure you know Officer Zala. He
Yes.
told me a few years ago, and I've always remembered this, he said, plan the hunt and hunt the plan. And I'm certain that you could rephrase that to plan the float and then float the plan.
Mm-hmm.
Tell somebody where you're going to go and then stick to it. And then if there is a problem, they can say, well, Officer Alley, he said he was going to be between here and there. And he would be back about this time. And you can use that to sort of gauge where he should have been somewhere along the route. And that's especially good on a river. If you have a put-in point and you're going to stop and you're going to fish, you're going to hunt wood duck or what have you, and then you should be off the water by 5, then that's pretty much of a game plan of where to look. I want to talk a little about skiing. When you're out on the water, you want people to have fun. You want them to enjoy the resource. You want them to have fun, and you're not there to make their day a bad day. You don't want to turn a sunny day to a cloudy one. And I've seen you approach boats, and one of the things you will tell someone is they are riding illegally, meaning they are somewhere on the gunnels or they're on a part of the boat where when that boat is underway, they shouldn't be there while the boat is underway.
the big thing about the prohibited riding is it's not necessarily. A lot of people think that we're worried about them getting cut with a prop, which we are to an extent. Some of the modern inboard boats, the prop's way up and underneath the boat, and they, the big argument with those people a lot of times, and I say those people, most of those people are good people. It's just the few that want to argue their side or whatever, and I can sort of understand it. But that, whether it be the swim platform, the rear sun deck, whatever on the boat, there's a few things back there that are pretty dangerous. Number one, the prop is back there. Another thing is just the fuel exhaust. There's a thing called carbon monoxide poisoning that we've actually had a few cases across the state, mostly from some generator exhaust years ago before they were vented out the standpipes on the top of the boat. But it's way too easy to fall off that vessel sitting in whatever position they're riding in. And it's not just your pleasure boats. A lot of the fishing boats, people want to sit in that front bass seat elevated while the boat's going. And if you've ever, like myself, at times eat a little too much and be a little heavy certain times of the year, those pedestals aren't that strong. They're rated for a weight, which by the time I get in most of them, I'm above that weight limit. But the potential of death or injury is just so severe to be riding in those places. And it may be the bow of the boat. It doesn't have to be the rear of the boat. But
if you have a skier in tow or someone on a wakeboard or on a tube and maybe you're pulling two people along, there's some rules that apply there as far as having a rear view mirror or having a spotter. Comment on those, please, and also rule in there, what if you're pulling a kite?
One of the or a few of the things about the skiing or the tubing or wakeboarding or whatever, if you do not have a mounted rear view mirror that gives you a 160-degree field of vision, you have to have a spotter 12 or older in the vessel with you to be able to watch that person. Reason being, back to the operator inattention thing, it's hard to watch them when you're pulling on skis, inner tube, or anything else, and still be able to see what you're going to. You can't watch in front of you and behind you at the same time. And skis and wakeboards and all those more maneuverable water toys, they may be beside you, and you're having to look from the front to the side to the back to the other side to make sure someone's not coming up on you. It just that spotter or that rear view wide-angle mirror are just really important to have. Of course, the person on whatever the water toy is, or the towable device, they have to have on a Coast Guard-approved personal flotation device. I can remember accidents over the years where they've hit submerged logs on skis. People have been pulled up on the bank, the shoreline, in real shallow water, hit stumps, and ended up with several broken ribs and everything. All kinds of injuries that, those people had life jackets on, and most of them made it. A few of them didn't, but I think they were short timers anyway once the collision occurred.
Mr. Campbell, what do you have to add to that?
Correct me if I'm wrong. I think it'd be good for the public to know, and isn't it correct if you're being towed and you are over the legal limit, intoxicated, you can be charged with alcohol intoxication?
You can actually be charged for manipulating water skis under the influence.
Okay.
It's actually more severe than just a alcohol intoxication. It's actually the same penalty as driving the vessel under the influence.
Water skiing under the influence. I'm hesitating here. I know a bunch of snow skiers that are probably snow skied under the influence, but that's a show for another type of whitewater. Coming up in the next segment, we will talk about incentives for safe boating, what officers might hand you in place of a citation. Stay with us. I'm Charlie Baglin, and this is Kentucky Afield Radio. This is Kentucky Afield Radio. My name is Charlie Baglin. If you've been on a boat, you know that on the water there are no stop signs, there are no traffic lights, no stripes on the water. So how skippers know what to do is kind of a fascinating topic. We'll cover that next. First up, our fishing report.
This is Jeff Crosby with the Central District Fishing Report. Black bass fishing across the district is very good. Bass are being caught on crate baits, especially off the points this time of year. Also, topwater baits such as buzz baits, Zara spooks, or Sammys have been very productive early in the morning and late in the evening. Additionally, plastic worms, creature baits, and pick and jig are being very productive when fished around shoreline cover at night. At Taylorsville, channels and blue catfish continue to be caught using cut bait in 8 to 15 feet of water. Don't forget about the streams and rivers in your area. It's an excellent time of year to canoe or kayak streams such as Elkhorn Creek, South Fork Licking, Salt River, or Floyd's Fork for good catches of smallmouth and rock bass. Remember always to ask for permission when entering private property when fishing these streams. Good luck and good fishing.
Hi, this is Eric Cummins with your Southwest Kentucky Fishing Report. At Barren River Lake, the lake is at summer pool with thermocline depth around 15 foot. The bass bite has been good early and late with top waters and at night with plastic worms and craws or slow-rolled spinner baits. Crappie have been fair over deeper brush piles or structure in about 15 foot of water with minnows and tubes, or at night under floating lights. At Green River Lake, the lake is also at summer pool with thermocline depth at around 15 foot. Bass have been good at night with plastic worms, craws, and deep, wide, wobbling crankbaits. Crappie have been fair over deep brush piles about 15 foot of water. Walleye also have been fair fishing drop-offs about 15 foot of water in the lower half of the lake with night crawler rigs. As always, good luck and good fishing. Be sure you wear your life jacket.
In western Kentucky, we've reached that time of the year which we think about summertime fishing patterns on Kentucky and Barkley Lakes. I'm thinking catfish, big bluegill out deep. The catfish, blues mainly, are on the river channel chasing shad, and so going out there bumping some lead off the bottom where you're just trying to stay in contact with the bottom, using night crawlers, cut bait, or live minnows. Bluegill out on the drops on ledges, find you some ledges that have some rock on them, just off the shoreline maybe where there's good drop. Night crawlers are good for some big bluegill. And then in the evenings, when the shad start congregating around the brush piles up shallow 4 or 5 foot of water in the embayments, a lot of decent-sized bass, throwback-sized bass, just to have some fun with, can be caught on spinner baits. Well, this is Paul Royster, and I hope you find a good day to go fishing.
Helicopter rescue swimmer Mike Baersky, United States Coast Guard.
chances are the Coast Guard wasn't there when you went overboard. But when you wear a Coast Guard-approved life jacket, we're closer than you think. Closer when you jet ski, fish, tube, canoe, kayak. There for close calls, when help isn't close at all.
Kentucky conservation officers remind you your life jackets got your back, and the backing of the best swimmers everywhere.
At the absolute worst, it was a little white lie.
A little white lie.
After all, when it hit the line, it felt like a 15-pounder. It doesn't matter what the scale says. So it might be an ever so slight deviation from the truth.
Sometimes in fishing, the truth is hard to catch.
Maybe just a stretch.
But the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife reminds you, fishing isn't about math. It's about fun.
And fudging a little if you need to.
Kentucky fishing.
It'll make a liar out of you.
Summertime is supposed to be a time of leisure. If you're a student, no classes. But a wise person knows you learn something new every day. Boating classes included, right, Zach?
Find and take an education course so you can get informed on all this stuff. And if you're informed, you'll be prepared. And if you're prepared, you'll have a much safer, more enjoyable, fun time on the water.
Boat-ed.com is one place to go.
I think the easiest thing is to go to our department website and go to the boating education. That will lead you to a couple of options. You can take this boat education course that we keep referencing. You can take it online at your house at your convenience. Covers all the same topics as a typical classroom setting class. So you have a couple of options there. You can take it online, or you can come to one of our classes that we teach.
How many hours, how long are these courses?
The courses will be completed in one day, and they will vary, but I would allow for probably about 4 to maybe 5 hours, depending on the officer and how much discussion takes place during the classroom session. But
so it's classroom. Is there a hands-on portion?
No, you don't have to. There's not a practical test where you put on the water and show your abilities as far as operating a vessel. It's all classroom presentation and then a test afterwards, or the online version is watching videos and reading and then taking quizzes throughout the course and then one test at the end. But you can get on our website, the one you mentioned earlier, the fw.ky.gov. There's a boat education tab, and you can go to that and see our schedule. U.S. Coast Guard Auxiliary offers numerous classes across the state at different times that you could go take it there. So we've tried to make them readily accessible for the boater to take, since it is such a key component that we recommend.
Zach, this is your baby, boater education. Is it an easy A, or can you actually fail it?
You can definitely actually fail it. It's a lot of information. We've got good educators, and just like a class, you got to go in. You got to pay attention. There's a lot of stuff that is common sense, but from listening to the radio show today, there's a lot of stuff that you'll need to study, you'll need to pay attention, and you'll need to know when you get tested on. You can definitely fail it. Like we talked about, there's many different options. The only real kicker is that course has to be NASBLA approved. The National Association of State Boating Law Administrators, which all of our courses are NASBLA approved. The Coast Guard Auxiliaries are NASBLA approved. Our online courses, which you can get on our website, that like we said before, Boat Ed. Boat Exam is another one. You just, when you're going through and you go online, just make sure it will say that if it's NASBLA approved or not, and that's what you need to get your boater education blue card. The only difference as far as time-wise, we said, roughly 4.5 to 6 hours for the in-person class. Some of the perks of the online classes, you can take it at your own pace, go through each module. There's practice quizzes, videos, and it just depends on what type of learner you are. One other major difference is your online course is gonna actually cost you, I believe it's $29.95. After you finish the course, you pass. You've entered your information into that website, and your card, your boater education blue card, will show up at your door.
So it's $29.90 something if you do it online, free.
Free in the classroom. Yes. $30 online, free if you decide to come to one of our classroom settings.
Is this similar to traffic school, to where if someone was pulled over for whatever the infraction, that part of the fine penalty would be to take this course?
No, we generally don't use it for that. We highly recommend it when we issue a citation if it's a common violation or the boater gives us the excuse, hey, I had no idea that was wrong. If we cite them or even if we courtesy notice them, we will encourage them to attend one of these boat education classes. The only exception to that is the boating under the influence law. State statute mandates that if you're convicted of boating under the influence, you must attend one of these boat education courses. As a matter of fact, we are working on modifying the course to be specifically for boating under the influence. In other words, there'll be a separate course for those convicted of boating under the influence that focuses more on the dangers of alcohol on the water. We're calling it our offenders course, and statute requires that those people that court mandated to take this course pay $100 for the course as part of their fine or punishment.
Let's assume every boater out there wants to have fun and do it properly and by the book and legally. Invariably, there's going to be a problem out there. Invariably.
There will.
It's going to be a dangerous situation. You will see someone operating under the influence. Mm-hmm. You will see accidents. Mm-hmm. Conservation officers or someone in the EMS isn't going to be anywhere around. What does somebody do if they come across an accident or an unsafe situation?
Survey the scene, of course. It's basic first aid and CPR type stuff. See what caused the accident. Make sure there's nothing there going to endanger them. And the first word of advice would be do what they can to get help. Hopefully, you'll have cell phone service. That's not always the case on our lakes. We've got several areas where, depending on your service provider, you may or may not have signal. So,
is it as simple as dialing 911?
It is, if you got signal. Like Officer Alley said, it's important to know where you're at on the lake. There's not really any mile markers or anything. If you know what creek you're in, something to give us a landmark on where you're at. Once you call 911, that'll start rallying the troops for help. We will do everything we can to help those in need. The issue of being in remote areas and locations on these bodies of water is just an added factor that we have to try to overcome.
Operation Dry Water. That's the last weekend of June 28th through 30. Mm-hmm. A national effort. What is National Dry Water? What's that mean? Zach, I know you're part of this.
Well, it's an idea that was formulated by NASBLA, the National Association of State Boating Law Administrators. The whole idea can be misconstrued, but it's basically we are going to have an increased law enforcement presence on the water. But the goal isn't to arrest people for boating under the influence. It's to inform the public that there will be an increased presence of law enforcement on the water and to not drink. We're trying to make that a weekend to basically be a blueprint for the public, how you need to act, not because there are so many officers on the water, but this is the right thing to do. So we're trying to keep them from drinking on that weekend.
Act as if there are officers on the water, even if you can't see one.
Yes, and each state during that weekend is required to record information and turn it into NASBLA at the end. Basically, we do complimentary vessel safety equipment checks. The big deal is each state has to record their BUIs and their arrests and turn that into NASBLA. So then each state is graded based off of those results on blood alcohol content for the state and the amount of BUIs on the water.
So whoever has the least of those, whichever state, wins. Am I reading that right?
Well, it's not so much a competition, but you can't compare state to state because there's so many more registered boaters in some states than others, so it's not a fair comparison, but the goal is education. It's no different than the click it or ticket seatbelt initiative on the highways. It's increased awareness to try to get the public to understand that, hey, this is illegal. We don't want you drinking on the water. We're gonna be out there in full force this weekend, this particular weekend. It's really not much different than any other weekend as far as an enforcement standpoint. We have officers on the water every weekend. We're just providing these complimentary checks at ramps, things of that nature, and we are looking a little harder for the BUI violations that weekend, but like Zach said, the big thing is the media push to get the word out to the boating public that, hey, we're really watching this weekend. We are every weekend, but like you said, we want them to act as though every weekend is an Operation Dry Water weekend.
Jared Alley, when you're on the water, Zach was telling me something this year that you're going to give away something that says, "I caught you wearing your life jacket."
It's sort of sad that a lot of times, about the only thing that we have to hand out is a courtesy notice or citation. And it's nice to on occasion, whether it, just some kind of token that we can give a family that has their kids appropriately in life jackets or people who are doing the right thing, to give them some little token or memento of their appreciation for helping us do our job better and for making the waterways safer. Mm-hmm. So I fully expect us to implement that and take it and run with it.
Yeah, it's a great program, and we're working closely, and Zach's been instrumental in getting this finalized for this boating season. I'll let him elaborate on it a little more. That's kind of one of his pet projects. But we've, in other parts of the state, depending on the areas, we've had Texas Roadhouse has been a big provider around the Louisville area, and our 3rd District officers, Texas Roadhouse has given us tokens for free kids' meals. If the officers pull up and they're wearing their life jackets like they could, we'll have something to give them out. And it varies across the state. Some of the marinas will give tokens for free ice cream cones or free drinks or something like that. It's nice to have, like Officer Alley said, something to give out. And Zach's been working closely with McDonald's, and we're going to have a program with them this year.
Well, Texas Roadhouse and McDonald's have been gracious to give us stuff for the officers to hand out. So basically, like we said before, the kid gets caught wearing his life jacket, even though he's supposed to be wearing his life jacket anyway. If he's under a certain age, it's good to have something for the officers to hand out that's a positive note, because number one goal is we want people to have fun and be safe. So that's what we're looking at with that. McDonald's is what we're getting into this year. It's going to be a little card that says wear it Kentucky, wear your life jacket, and kids caught with life jackets will get a free ice cream cone that they can turn it in. It'll have the McDonald's that are participating listed on the little coupon, and McDonald's has been a great sponsor with this on the eastern portion of the state. So Jared, down there on Lake Cumberland, you guys are going to be flooded with those.
Pretty cool. Let me ask my standard last question. Do you text and drive?
No.
Zach, yes or no?
I don't have a smartphone.
That means he evaded the question, so it's likely a yes.
No, I really don't have a smartphone.
Okay. Officer Jared Alley, do you text and drive?
No.
Text and fish, that's okay. Text and boat, maybe. Text and drive, absolutely not.
Absolutely not.
You're listening to Kentucky Afield Radio. The Temptation to Tame the Wild, next on Kentucky Afield Radio. From rabbits to raccoons to deer, spring and summer is that time of year when most wildlife is raising its young. Occasionally, baby wildlife becomes separated from its mother or from its nest, and as we happen upon them in the outdoors, it can be awfully tempting to take one home as a pet.
There is an innate nature for us to want to take care of these animals. In 99% of the cases, it's just not the best thing for the animal or for you.
Dan Feigert, a wildlife biologist with the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, says wildlife is called wild for a very good reason.
An animal that's raised by a person has no idea maybe how to hunt for itself now or how to find shelter, because typically its parents would have showed it how to do that. Now you've done all these things, and it doesn't know how to do it in the wild.
The objective here clearly is to convince you to leave wildlife where you find it. But doing so can fly in the face of human compassion. From puppies and kittens, what baby creature doesn't want to be held and fed and kept warm? What is the harm? As well-intentioned as we may be, the simple answer is, we don't know how.
Newborn fawns, those little legs go kicking around. They may be cute, but they can do a lot of damage. Claws are like razor blades.
Alice Norton is a wildlife rehabilitator, a caregiver for orphaned and injured wild animals in central Kentucky. Alice may treat up to 100 animals each year. By summer's end, those fortunate enough to survive are returned to the wild. Meanwhile, her home is their home, but pets, they're not.
There's way too much in our own homes that is dangerous. Carpeting, PVC pipe, the wood in our house, it's usually treated. They want to ingest things, it doesn't matter what kind of animal they are.
Bone, fur, and other things we find too disgusting to mention, they find delicious and necessary for proper nutrition, things you'll only find in the wild, not in your kitchen. Foods brought home from the pet care aisle will likely do more harm than good. That aside, baby wildlife don't grow up to be loving pets like cats and dogs.
Animals that are cute and cuddly when they're small grow up to be not so cute, not so cuddly. What was feeding from your hand at one point in time might try to bite your hand now. That's their natural way of learning how to survive on their own.
Some animals are on their own for their own protection.
Rabbits and deer are the first things people pick up that should leave alone, because the mother in those cases do not stay with the young. She has a scent and they don't. So if she stayed with her young, she would bring predators straight to them.
Important to point out is that taking wildlife can be illegal. Depending on the animal in your care, state and federal laws can come into play. You may be required to have a holding or propagation permit. You may need a special purpose rehabilitation or education permit, which requires you to provide documented evidence that you know what you're doing. Issues all worth discussing with wildlife authorities beforehand. Also, you could bring home more than just a wild critter.
Wild animals have all types of diseases that we don't come in contact with on a routine basis. And so if you keep an animal, it might have a disease that you would be susceptible to if you were to come in contact with it.
You can domesticate them only to a point. And again, if you do have one that you've domesticated, you better keep him away from any friends or family, because if he bites, our state says it must be destroyed and tested.
Squirrels, songbirds, chipmunks, rabbits, to name a few, find their way into our yards from time to time, and that's about as close to having a wildlife pet as we need to get. After all, they may be doing us a favor.
A lot of people want to keep snakes of all kinds. If you have the black or garter snakes, leave him alone and let him be. He'll keep down the mouse population. They do way too much good for us to keep them confined.
It's our nature to care for the well-being of animals, and enough has been said about what you can't or shouldn't do. Now here's something you can. If an animal has become legitimately orphaned or injured, contact a wildlife rehabilitator in your area. They have the training and resources to render effective care until it can be returned to suitable habitat. If it's just little, cute, fuzzy, and adorable, let it be fuzzy and cute in the care of Mother Nature. As difficult as it is to resist, please do yourself, your kids, and most of all the animal a favor by leaving wildlife in the wild. A special report on wildlife pets from Kentucky Afield Radio. Charlie Baglin here. I'm looking at a news article from the Kentucky Department of Fish and Wildlife, and it says, National Magazine names Kentucky as top destination for trophy deer. Maybe you saw this. If not, it is well worth repeating. Outdoor Life magazine has named Kentucky as the nation's top destination for trophy deer hunting. The National Hunting and Fishing magazine based its rankings on trophy deer production, fees, and how hunter-friendly the laws and regulations were in each state. The trophy deer hunting possibilities in Kentucky aren't a secret anymore, according to Dr. John Gassett, who is the commissioner of the Department of Fish and Wildlife. Last year, he says, we sold deer permits to residents from every state in the country. The word is out that hunting in Kentucky is just that good, he says, end quote. Outdoor Life magazine editor Andrew McKeon, he notes that the magazine looks beyond just the number of trophy deer harvested. When you're considering the investment of time and money it takes, it's important to consider all the factors that go into the big picture. Still, Kentucky has recorded some impressive numbers of deer over the past few years. In 2011-2012, hunters took 77 Boone and Crockett Club eligible bucks. The department is still receiving scores from the 2012-13 season. There are multiple reasons why Kentucky's deer herd is of such high quality. The state provides habitat guidance to landowners throughout its network of private land wildlife biologists. Kentucky allows Sunday hunting and has an extended deer season, including a 136-day archery season this year. Kentucky's one-buck rule also plays a major role in the state's trophy deer production. Before the rule, 80% of the bucks taken in Kentucky were just a year and a half old, too young to grow into trophy-class deer. However, since the state passed that one-buck limit back in 1989 through 91, the number of young bucks taken by hunters dropped to nearly 40%. And with age comes larger antler size. If you look at the numbers according to Commissioner Gassett, you'll see that hunters took trophy bucks in 116 of our 120 counties. He says if you do your homework and you hunt hard, you could take home a trophy buck from anywhere in the state. You can learn more about those rankings and read the article for yourself at OutdoorLife.com. We are out of time. This is Charlie Bagman inviting you back. Next week, we'll go inside outdoors again, here on Kentucky Afield Radio.